My trip to Amsterdam to take psilocybin truffles in effect started a year and a half before I actually got there. What happened was that basically accumulated lifetime aggravations had piled up on me, and I started to excessively relate to the world through, shall we say, hatred and anger, a very jagged hatred and anger. It was excessive, and fundamentally I was frazzled. And to say it was PTSD, it was not nearly as extreme as something like that. It was the case of being alienated. I had seen people alienated, other people who had sour and excitable dispositions. There's other people who I had seen, their house was always very messed up because their mind was messed up. And I was headed in that direction. So I felt that a chemical vacation was in order. Now, the immediate triggers to that was been living in Israel for over 30 years, mostly among Hasidim. I am a Hasid, note the frock coat, zebra, garb of a Yerushalmi Hasid. I even have a strimel here. I'll model it for you so you could see that. I tend to believe that psychedelics should be basically taken by rabbis, often with their congregants, or teachers with their students. The issue of being a Hasid is, in my case, it was poverty. It just seems that to be a Hasid, you have to be poor. There's something about, if you're wind up poor, Hasidus tends to become very attractive. If you have a little bit of money, it's like the Hasidus runs away from you. The problem that you run into with poverty, and this very much includes the religious poor, the ultra-religious poor, many of which are very poor, is you get ignorance and squalor. Poverty is more than an issue of just not having money. There's a mentality that goes with it, and it goes in both directions. People become vulgar because they're poor, and vulgar people become poor, and you find that a lot in places like Mea Sharim in Israel. Garbage and litter all over the place. People who cannot write the numbers, and a dictionary is considered a pornographic book. And I come from a traditional Jewish background, and I tend to be intelligent, refined. These are the types of things that have a nexus to psychedelics. You always see on the websites with psychedelics a high proportion of people who are PhDs. You start seeing the people who are picking the mushrooms, and they will tell you their scientific names. So I found myself in conflict with the people. The things that brought me to Hasidus was basically I tend to be extremely dogmatic. That's just part of my nature, the way my head works. External standards, following them, consulting them, analyzing them, is very much part of my personality, especially Old Testament standards. On top of that, basically, I believe in clearly defined sex roles, no sex outside of marriage, and the girlfriend boyfriend relationships and the licentiousness of secular society is a chronic irritant, and it's especially an irritant with my family, friends, as well as the issues of Orthodox Judaism and living in Israel with my Jewish friends, because Jews often have hang-ups about them, and even if you're not talking about them, it becomes a simmering issue, especially since in my heart I would prefer to have my family and Jewish friends Orthodox and living in Israel, even though I'm well aware of the problems. And that shows up. So again, you're dealing with another chronic irritant. And it was a case where I'm 66. Eventually, these things caught up with me, and basically, I was frazzled. And I knew about psychedelics. I had taken LSD when I was in college, and I saw that I really had to take them again to relieve the shall we say, the aggravation that I was experiencing. So I researched it, and you could go to Peru and take ayahuasca. There's any number of retreats revolving around psychedelics. I did not want to spend the money. Saw on it was actually the Teleport Hotel in Amsterdam that had a blog about psychedelics and how their staff would help you find a smart shop, and they're there to answer any sort of questions. So that was my choice to go there, and the clerks were very good. Not all of them were liked psychedelics. You had a mixed bag, but they were all very nice, and they advised that I go to Kokopelli, a smart shop. It's in the red light district, more or less. It's next to the central station in Amsterdam, a short walk from there. And I went there and I talked it over with the clerk. He asked all the right questions. And he wound up advising Dolphin's Delight Truffles, which is a fairly weak psilocybin mushroom. Okay, they're all strong, but this one is less strong than most of them. He he would have preferred that I get the 15-gram package. I took the 10-gram package. My reasoning was I hadn't taken them in quite some time, but I'd have to say I would have been better off getting the 15-gram package. He was a little bit disappointed that I was being timid. Um, it would have amounted to another 2 hours of the intense psychedelic experience. So I took them back to my hotel room. I hadn't, I wasn't tired from the flight at all. I hadn't eaten in a number of hours, the amount of hours that they advise that you refrain from eating, and I took them. And within a short time, really before I even finished eating them, well, I started to feel the body high. And it got more intense, becoming a head high. It was much like marijuana or whiskey, taking a shot of whiskey, the feelings a person feels in their head, in their body, but it gradually became more intense. Colors became more vivid, and I became more relaxed. Then I wanted to listen to music, and I had my tablet with me, and I turned it on to some of a playlist that I made, and I was not intending to sleep. I basically started to slumber, but then I heard it was a song by the Seekers. I'll never find another you. It's a love song. There's a new world out there they call the promised land, and I'll be there someday if you will hold my hand. It's very beautiful, and it just came across as extraordinarily beautiful. And I was to talk to one of the clerks at the hotel later, and he commented, perhaps picking up on what I had experienced, about the intense beauty of music while a person is taking psilocybin. Another experience that I had was I started to pant, not strongly, but noticeably, and I felt like I wanted to salivate. And I would not have called it a negative experience, but nevertheless, I would have preferred to do without it. And I just wondered about that. And later on the next day, when I was pondering just what was it that was happening to me, I was getting to basically the root of a lot of some of the problems that were at hand. And the psilocybin was bringing them to the surface and expelling them. That's what it came out to be. It was uprooting them from the system. And the problem is that there was something in my personality that when I was pursuing a goal, I would strongly pursue it. It was like I would be panting after doing whatever the task I had to be doing, and that the task I would consider very beautiful. It may have, in fact, and it was like I was salivating over it. And the truth of the matter is that these attitudes were really excessive. There's room in your personality for something like that, but not all the time. Not that shouldn't be a general part of your personality. And I remembered when I was a little boy, my mother said that I was too regimented, that I'd have to learn to relax, and that eventually it would cause me problems. And also, I had a good friend who said that I have to take it slow. It's not that important. Don't sweat the small stuff. Things that he would say. And with both of them, I did not really understand what they were saying and how it applied to me. I was basically blind to what I was doing. And this was coming out. And in fact, that has been permanently uprooted from my personality. I mean, it's no longer something natural for me to do. I also felt some strong feelings of love, just the emotion itself. And I'm not married, never been married. I have an older sister. I'm really one of 6 children, but the older sister, I have a reasonably close relationship. The old brother-sister love relationship is still there, and it came out somewhat strongly there. And I gave her a call on the phone. It was after I peaked. I wanted to talk to someone who I loved. So I gave her a call, and the nature of my sister, I guess we all have our picadillos, is you have to call her several times before she'll talk to you. She's always busy with one thing or other. She kind of likes to be chased after, but so I just simply said, left her a message. I said, look, I really want to talk to you. So she sent me an email saying that, she was available. She was a little concerned because usually I don't say something like that. And I said, no, I'm basically fine. And I explained to her, what was happening. I had told her that what I was planning to do. I didn't actually tell her when I was getting on the plane, but so we had a nice talk. Then also after I peaked, I went downstairs to the lobby in the hotel room, and I talked to the clerks and the other guests. It was a very friendly place. Maybe Holland is a friendly place in general. I wanted something to eat, and there was a small supermarket by the train station, but it was raining and cold, and I was a little bit reluctant to start going out in an unfamiliar place. If you're tripping, you should always keep in mind that you are tripping, so as not to get carried away with the experience and do something that may actually be harmful. That's a key thing to keep in mind if you are taking a strong psychedelic like psilocybin. You must have Kabbalat Lave, acceptance in the heart, that I am tripping, and keep that in mind. And your mind plays tricks on you in strange new places. You could be standing a block away from the hotel and not see it. So I did not want to go there. So the clerk said that they do have fresh fruits, apples, pears, and they had a restaurant. It was for a continental breakfast. I had not bought the continental breakfast or signed up for it, and they told me that if I signed up for the continental breakfast, that he'd bring me a bowl of fruit right now. So I said, yeah, by all means do so, and it was very nice. Yeah, after that, basically the straw. After about 6 hours, the strong psychedelic effects had passed. Even though I could still feel a lot of the effects of the psilocybin, shall we say, in my personality. Music was still very nice. Not as nice as before, but it was still very nice. And one of the things that, so to speak, was cleaned up in my personality was that music had become very dull to me. The beauty in it had been restored. Also, one of the clerks, who was particularly friendly and helpful, mentioned that the central station in Amsterdam was particularly beautiful, and I thought about it. I commented, I said, yeah, that really is true. That remained with me. Later on, I stayed for basically a week in Amsterdam, a little bit less. Touring, I stopped into a coffee shop to buy some cannabis. I smoked it, but I found that the high from the cannabis, which was pleasant, but it detracted from the lingering high of the psilocybin. So if you're gonna do it, I'd say keep that in mind. Also, when I returned to Israel, and I would typically drink wine with Kiddush on Passover and wine with my meals, that I did that considerably less. My desire for alcoholic beverages declined very substantially, and it's still much less than it was, this is months ago, than it was before I made the trip. Okay, after that, it was more than 72 hours. I took psilocybin again, this time something stronger, cosmic connections. Again, I went to a smart shop in by the central station. For whatever reason, I couldn't find Kokopelli again. I think my mind was playing tricks on me. And I saw a smart shop which displayed the different packages for the truffles, and there was a girl. She may have been a prostitute, I don't know. Pretty girl, somewhat doing a young girl, bohemian type. She noticed I'm looking at the truffles, and she was very knowledgeable about them. And I had a somewhat lengthy discussion with her, telling her that, I was intending to buy them. I just didn't know which one I wanted to buy. It was one of the situations where if I was in Israel, I would have said, look, can you just let me read these labels, and when I'm ready to buy it, I'll just go to the checkout counter and get it. Essentially, because very often here these sales help are not that helpful. They're trying to sell you something, and they're often not that truthful. In the case of this girl, she was very truthful. And she had the insight to know that she had a live one on the line, and that if she just simply stuck to the material, that I was going to buy it. I was there to buy, and she was going to help me. So uh, some were contemplated. I didn't want a contemplative one. I wanted one that would have visuals. I wanted one on the strong side. So I at once it became I had settled on one. She invited me into the store and rung it up, and then it was not clear what she was doing. It was either if she was a prostitute, she may have been soliciting me. I wasn't interested. Um, so basically, she gave me a cue that it's time to leave, and I had gotten what I wanted, and I took them back to the hotel. It's an important thing to remember that Mea Sharim is not like Amsterdam, and if you're too friendly and too warm, you can be misunderstood. You have to know when it's appropriate to terminate a conversation, not to go overboard, and to know the proper cues when the person is telling you that it's time to say goodbye. The party's over. Last call, as they say in the bars. So I went back to my room and I took it. And in the case of this one, it was more of a body high. It was kind of like I was taking a bath or a nice shower, but it was massaging every cell in my body. And what I was to realize later on was that these feelings that I was getting in my body, in my head, were basically signs of good health. That when I was eating just normal meals or doing exercises, doing stretches, if I got one of these feelings, albeit not nearly as intense as I was feeling them at the time, of the psilocybin, that this was a sign that of health, and that whatever I was doing at the time, I should continue in that direction. Also, I found myself, yearning for just pleasant conversations with people. One of the difficulties I've had in general is that I'm just not on the same wavelength with people. Part of the reason is because I am more intelligent and more refined than most people. As a result, that creates a degree of difficulties, and that's, you want to be modest, but it comes out that the people who take psychedelics tend to be people with good character, who are intelligent, and they're going in that direction. They tend to be the pioneers in new ideas. And it's a situation where you're leading, but somewhat in conflict. It's you're the social critic. You're the party pooper, but people recognize that really what you're saying is correct in what they should be doing it, and they may be annoyed at the time, but ultimately they go in that direction. The thing is that humility tends to be an aspect of character, good character, and of intelligence. And you'd like to think that everybody has the same good talents that you have, and everyone will see these things as pleasing as you do. That is not true. The takeaway, though, was that there are some times that you have to cry. Now, when I say cry in this case, it wasn't really sobbing with your nose running and that type of thing. It was a few tears and a little bit upset for a moment. And that is really part of the human condition. It's a case where if you're going to be a healthy feeling human being, you have to do that from time to time. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's not even unpleasant. But nevertheless, there's a tendency for people over the time and over difficulty to become hard. And that the psilocybin and psychedelics tends to make you more soft, tends to make you more sensitive, tends to make you more human. Okay, after that, I had completed my experiences. I returned, and the problems that I came back to, it's basically the same problems, but it's a case where I had cleansed my spirit and I had learned something. So, somewhat of a more sweeter person. My voice is much more pleasant. My face is more pleasant. In terms of being hateful and angry, the difficulty is that, well, there are some things that you should really hate and you should really be angry about. And what the psilocybin has done is it's refined that, I can tell a person to go to hell, okay? Yeah, and it doesn't bother me so much. You'd rather give someone a compliment, but you have to know how to be a bit of a nasty guy, and the trick is that it shouldn't bother you, and it shouldn't be excessive. It shouldn't eat away at your gut. Okay, you have to know how to do these things properly. And also, made me appreciate my friends better. The people who are kind to me. That's become much more prominent in my mind than it was, and that's a healthy thing. Often you find out in the course of events that the aggravation remains, the kindness fades quickly, and that can be a distortion. And in my case, that had happened, and basically I needed something to put things back into the proper perspective. I don't know if I would recommend this for everyone. You have to have the right personality. I'd say there's room for somebody who doesn't have the personality but seems to have to do some sort of exploring, that it's appropriate for them to say, look, you take psilocybin for me, think about what is on my mind, and then tell me what needs to be done and react to me in the way that it should be reacted. Still a lot more work that has to be done in fully understanding these things. Okay, thank you.